After a long journey across the countryside, the party finds itself outside an abandoned homestead where they find shelter for the evening. Make a fire, enjoy what rations they have left, lay out their bedrolls, and try to settle in. As the first person takes watch, they notice a shuffling sound coming from around the room as footsteps creak through. Hear the sounds of something in the walls moving around, and when they go to investigate, they don't find anything. Eventually, during, I'd say, the second watch, having been warned about the noises, the creaking and the shuffling and the scratching returns as it guides that player into the basement, where, in the middle of the floor, they find the previous owner of the homestead. A young woman who has passed recently, but not so recently as the body would be intact completely. And as the player goes to investigate what happened to this poor woman, her body begins to writhe and her bones crack as she shambles herself into an upright position as she looks at it with a demonic blue eyes. Her head violently cracks around as a hideous laughter begins pouring from her mouth. Your party has just encountered the Dybbuk. This week, of course, we'll be covering the Dybbuk from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, from Mordecai's Monsters of the Multiverse. I'm your GM Isaiah, and welcome to Game Master's Arsenal. Roll initiative. Now, Dybbuk is the perfect kind of entity to run this time of year as the fall sets in, and we're in the spooky season right now, or any time that you really want a spooky season. The Dybbuk can be a fun little creature and an interesting challenge for the players. So, first of all, let's talk about what the Dybbuk is. Uh, okay, so the Dybbuk is, of course, a demons that terrorize mortals on the material plane by possessing corpses and giving them a semblance of life. After which the demons use them to engage in a range of sordid activities. They appear as translucent flying jellyfish, trailing long tentacles as they move through the air and rarely travel in this fashion. However, they normally possess a suitable corpse as a vehicle. They delight in terrorizing other creatures by making their host bodies behave in horrifying ways. So when you're talking about what kind of demon you're kind of going with kind of him, this is your exorcist type of demon. The head spinning around, projectile vomiting, and if the players don't know it's a demon, well, they're in for a little bit of surprise, and you can kind of play around on that as that. Now, as far as NPCs go, Dybbuks don't make the best NPCs. It's because of the way they behave. Sure, if say the party needs to say the party is, you're playing an evil campaign and they're working for a demon, in which case sometimes Dybbuk can act as a kind of quest giver. As always, like, the quest giver is always out for its own intentions, and these have a hedonistic views where it just wants to terrorize people. That's what it wants. This thing is, when you're thinking about demons in D&D, the Dybbuk is the perfect semblance of that. It wants to terrorize and destroy. It wants to cause chaos for its own satisfaction. And so, as far as NPCs go, it's going to have you causing a lot of chaos as a quest giver. Which is why I feel like most campaigns, it will not be seen as an NPC, but rather as a part of a quest. And there's a couple different ways you could run about this. one great quest hook is the Dybbuk is in a graveyard. It's haunting a graveyard. The recently dead have begun rising from their graves and terrorizing the town. The adventurers are hired to go clear them out. This can lead into something bigger where they discover something brought the Dybbuk there. Good way to set up a bigger antagonist for your characters. And then you've got your classic kind of haunted house or exorcist setup where a local priest has been contracted to go cast this thing out. And so while the party is fighting this thing, another ritual is being done to cleanse the area. It honestly, like, it's a very simple monster, which is brilliant because there's a lot of horrifying ways you could do this. Your description should be visceral. You're trying to terrify your players. Like, okay, when I say terrify your players, there is a certain amount of leeway you have in that, and depending on your play group. For instance, my play group were completely fine with descriptions as far as it goes, and visceral descriptions of monsters and their behaviors. But of course, every party has a different thing. Maybe just the fact of before the Dybbuk fight, before leading up to the Dybbuk fight, you kind of set up this like spooky atmosphere for them. I use the term spooky, but it can be a scary atmosphere. It may have been in the house forever, setting up traps, leading its victims in, trying to get a fresh body for itself. And so the parties are sent in to kind of deal with that threat. And of course, my favorite is one that I've recently used on my players. I highly recommend this if you're ever wanting to give them like a parcel of land or anything, which is a lost keep or an abandoned keep or homestead or whatever you want to give them. Because what you can do is you can set up that other people have been sent to clear this out. And this can set up a larger threat when they go up against the Dybbuk when combat, which I'll talk about in a little bit later. Well, very soon. But as far as it goes, like, it can be, okay, they need to go in and clear out a Dybbuk. The Dybbuk's been there, it knows the terrain. A Dybbuk's usually in its area for a little bit while. It likes to haunt places and cause chaos, so of course it kind of has its central home, and because of that it has home field advantage. It can set traps, it can do everything. It's intelligent enough to do that. These things have an intelligence of 16. They are not dumb creatures. They would know what they're doing. This is a creature that sets up everything, and the quest can sufficiently explain that as it tries to scare them away. And if it fails to scare them away, then as a latter resort, it must remove them or make it join its group of corpses. Now, let's talk combat. Okay. So, the Dybbuk isn't the kind of monster that you just throw in. The Dybbuk is the kind of monster that you gotta set up for. It's not a random encounter thing. The Dybbuk's been in the home for a while, so it knows the terrain. What you want to do is in combat, when you're setting up and prepping for it, escape options for the Dybbuk, if you'd like, either an upper floor or lower floor that the players haven't investigated, aren't in, or don't know about. Holes in the walls, so it has incorporeal movement, which means as long as it doesn't, after it's left a body, as long as it doesn't return, end its movement inside of a wall, it won't take damage from it. So if it's got holes in the walls to move around and maybe some other bodies to put in there, you want to scatter bodies around, different types. The difficulty of the Dybbuk can really depend on the type of creature that it takes over. So it has the Possessed Corpse ability. It disappears into a corpse within 5 feet that belong to a larger, smaller beast or humanoid. Gains 20 temporary hit points. It adopts this corpse's size and can't use its game statistics remain the same. Which means, so what it means is, how this fight kind of goes is, the Dybbuk strategy is to jump in and out of bodies as safely as it can. Opportunity attacks to get away are fine because, you know, if it goes, it just drops the body and moves on. So it has a recharge of 6, which means it can only do this once, but unless you roll a 6, but you know, you're the DM. If you want it to possess another corpse, it's really cool. And if you're going up against higher level parties, if you want to make this thing a true threat to like a level 5 or 10 parties and wanted to modify it to use it, give it change that recharge, alter its stat blocks. I've talked about I haven't talked about this, but the stat block is a guide. It gives you the abilities, it gives you an easy reference to use, but as you're kind of going through it, if you're like, oh yeah, I need to adjust this, adjust it. That's what the stat block is there for. As far as combat goes and why it's really good in tight corridors and like rooms, because what it does is as soon as it's getting lower on that 20 HP line, it retreats. It's all right taking opportunity attack because most of it won't carry over. At least I don't believe it does. Yeah, I'm not seeing that it does carry over. But you can home rule that if you want the damage to carry over. So it can, you know, run away, take the opportunity attack, drop its other form, and keep running. Because this thing can only be killed in its jellyfish form. It can't be killed inside of a body, because as soon as it drops to 0 from its temporary hit points, it becomes the jellyfish form. You know, requires some strategy on your player's part and how to take it down. This is very much a long fight and a boss monster. It's going to wear down the opponents. They're going to be fighting this thing multiple times. Even if they don't know it's Dybbuk, maybe this Dybbuk's smart. Maybe when the corpse dies, it stays in there and then floats out a little bit after the party leaves. If they don't pay attention to it, they won't catch it. This thing is smart. It can set traps like that. It can waste resources. That should be one of its plays, is trying to waste resources before it's forced to fight it in its jellyfish form. But most of the time what'll happen is, I've seen it plenty of times, a bunch of people hold actions, wait until somebody beats the ever-living crap out of the body, it pops out, and they just go ham on the jellyfish. When I use this against my players, anecdotal I know, but they fought it in a room with hallways and everything, and so what they did is they started burning the bodies. Very smart. Started removing the bodies. And so this kind of fight forces on-the-fly strategic decisions. It has magic resistance, so the spellcasters aren't going to be able to take this out very easily. It also has resistances to acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder, bludgeoning, and piercing and slashing from non-magical attacks. You know, the standard stuff. It's a CR4, so this is where you're getting into the stuff where they have a lot of immunities, a lot of resistances. Can't be charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, poisoned, prone, or restrained. It has dark vision and a passive perception of 14. It's also a spellcaster. So this thing can get itself out of the frame. That's why it's such a cool monster, is because at will it can D-door. So if this thing doesn't like what's going on, it's gone. The fight has to take place at another time. And then 3 times a day it has Phantasmal Force to really mess with players. If you want to use that Phantasmal Force for the kind of scary factor, to kind of throw things across, maybe get some damage in before the fight actually starts, you can run it that way. As far as fighting it, it's hard to kill. Most players will like wail into these things, and so like my players, they've never gone up against a Dybbuk. I didn't tell them it was a Dybbuk. In fact, when I laid out my stat block, because we were playing online and I utilized Roll20, I didn't label it as Dybbuk until way later into the fight, so they didn't know they were fighting a Dybbuk. And so when the jellyfish came up, they thought they could only damage it in the corpse state. It wasn't until somebody hit the jellyfish with a magic sword that they realized, oh yeah, we need to kill it in the jellyfish form. They started burning bodies, doing everything they needed to make sure this thing couldn't utilize them anymore. Starving it out for resources. They were burning their own resources. This is one of those fights that really took a toll on the players. But it should be rewarded. Dybbuks kind of hang around for a long time. They would amass some treasure. This is the kind of creature that might have a small hoard, not a major one, but might have a couple items, a couple weapons. Be aware of that when you're like modifying this for upper players. Give this guy some weapons. It keeps its own stats, which is a strength of 6 and a dex 19. So if you're going up, putting a Dybbuk against a higher level party, how I would say to do it is up its HP, uh, up its HP, give it different bodies with different ACs. Yeah, different armor. So maybe there's a paladin that went down. So when it's in that guy, it's in plate armor. And when it's in another guy, that creates an interesting dynamic for the players, because as you play, you notice your players pick up on the ACs that you're using. And so the Dybbuk can mess with that and really mess with combat and with the players. Because if it jumps into a body with AC of 20, and now they think, oh crap, we need a 20 to hit this thing. And then it jumps into a body of AC 15, maybe they start throwing spells. Maybe they don't realize that it can't be it can be hit easier, or the other way, if it's in a body that's in an unarmored state that's really easy to hit, they assume it's going to be really easy to hit, break formation, begin wailing on it, then it jumps into a body with a plate mail and a shield. I mean, there's no reason that you couldn't give it proficiencies either. When you're talking about upgrading this, it's a boss monster. It's a scary boss monster for a party of level 4s. This thing will run them, especially depending on how many bodies you put it in. But it's a fun monster and definitely worth it this time of year to run it. This has been a little bit of a longer episode. I've been very much rambling about the Dybbuk. I really enjoyed this creature. I wish more people utilized it. It can be a lot of fun for your players. And of course, for you as well. That's important. Both parties will have a blast playing this thing. That's all we have as far as the Dybbuk goes. So get out there, throw it at your players. And of course, don't be afraid to, modify its stat block for higher level players. You're this far. Come on. We're what, 16, 17 minutes into this. You made it this far. You might as well like, subscribe, comment. Please make your D20 roll. I want to know how you guys rolled initiative against my Dybbuk. I'm your host, Isaiah. This has been Game Master's Arsenal. Thank you for listening, and this is where we're going to leave it tonight.